Welcome to the Assembly on Government Affairs. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assemblyman Carter,
Present.
Assemblyman DeLong,
Present.
Assemblyman De Silva,
Here.
Assemblywoman Duran, Assemblywoman Gonzalez, Assemblyman Gurr, Assemblyman Hibbets, Assemblyman Koenig, Assemblyman MacArthur, Assemblyman Wynn, Assemblywoman Taylour, Assemblywoman Thomas, Chair Torres.
Welcome to the audience here in Carson City and those joining us by a very packed room and video conference in Las Vegas and those listening over the internet. Mayor Hardy, welcome back to the Legislative Building. I know it's not hard or difficult for you to come back and return home.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joe Hardy for the record, Mayor of Boulder City for the last 2 months. I appreciate being here and being before you and your committee, and appreciate the experience that your committee has already, and obviously the experience that you're going to gain. My last 2 children were born in Boulder City. We've been there for 40 years. I've had opportunity to be a family doctor there, and appreciate the people that live in Boulder City. We talk about Boulder City in terms of one words: the dam, the railroad museum, Lake Mead, the hospital, the solar fields, the power generation. It's really the people of Boulder City, who are much like all the people in the state of Nevada. It really comes down to the people, who they are and what they do. I became a leader of a faith-based organization when I was first in Boulder City, and had my first experience in Boulder City with a family. I was called down to Lake Mead, and if you've been to Lake Mead, you see campgrounds and people who are staying there. And I was apprised of a family that was there, and I went down and I found a family with several children, a mother and a father, and they were having lunch. The lunch consisted of a jar of peanut butter, eating it with a spoon out of the jar. And that was typical of our homeless population now. So I put together a group of people who cared and who shared. And we got a tire for their car from the tire shop there in Boulder City, because they couldn't go anywhere without a tire. We got them fed, we got them taken care of by the people of Boulder City. And my wife, before I came up, we were talking about the homeless, and she said, well, who do we call? I mean, it's that Ghostbuster question. Who do we call? And the obvious question is, you call the police. Well, they're not breaking any laws. So what do the police do? I mean, the police don't arrest them and throw them in jail. So what do we do? And that's where the people come into play. And so I asked our city manager, who's next to me, I said, so what do we do? And he said a very poignant thing. He said, we help them. And so the city of Boulder City has a way to call the non-emergency number for the police department, 293-9224, in order to get the emergency aid and the other organizations, faith-based organizations and other organizations of people who care. And one of the beauties of Boulder City is it's filled with people who care. And so that's my observation. We can talk about Parks and Rec department, we can talk about the credit union, we can talk about all the wonderful things that are going to and are happening in Boulder City, and I'll let Taylour Tedder list and enumerate everything, but it really comes down to the people. And we in Boulder City love to partner with the other municipalities and county in Clark County, as well as have input into the state of Nevada. So I'm thrilled with the opportunity to serve, thrilled with the opportunity to testify before you, and I would be happy to let our city manager elucidate all the other things that we do in Boulder City, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairwoman Torres and committee members. I'm Taylour Tedder, City Manager of Boulder City, and the Mayor and I's goal today is to share a little bit about our community and educate you why it is a unique and integral part of Nevada. So Boulder City is historically significant to the development of our state. The Boulder Canyon Project Act authorized the construction of Hoover Dam, which was signed by President Coolidge in 1928, just as the Great Depression was beginning. Construction was set to start in 1931, and 5,000 families came to work on the project, and Boulder City was built to house the workers. The Bureau of Reclamation held title to all of the land, and the federal government essentially owned Boulder City at that time. The construction was completed in 1936 and almost 2 years ahead of schedule. And in 1958, the federal government transferred ownership of Boulder City's government, which incorporated in January of 1960. And at the time, the city covered approximately 33 square miles, which is 1/6 of the size that our city is today. So Boulder City is unique compared to the rest of Nevada. We have various charter amendments which keep the city much like it was in its early days. Since incorporation, gambling has always been prohibited, and we're one of only 2 cities in Nevada that prohibit gambling, which also means that we receive no gaming revenue. Voters adopted a ballot initiative in 1979 for growth control, so we're only allowed to build 120 homes per year. Which has kept growth limited, even negative, in the past 40 years. While Boulder City acquired 167 square miles of former federal land in 1995, the voters in 1997 restricted how the city can dispose of that land. So while we have the largest square miles in Nevada, most of it does remain undeveloped as conservation lands. So the voters have to approve any time that we sell land over 1 acre. And the city also has a limit on our debt obligations, so we're essentially a pay-as-you-go community. We have to go out to the voters to ask to take out any debt over $1 million. So to my right is Mayor Joe Hardy. Last year, the voters elected longtime Boulder City resident Dr. Joe Hardy as mayor, and many of you might know him from his days as a state of Nevada assemblyman and senator. Although the role of mayor is nonpartisan in nature, I've heard that Dr. Hardy was well respected and willing to work with his colleagues on either side of the aisle, and we're truly fortunate to have someone with his expertise and character leading our city. Our other council members include Mayor Pro Tem Sherry Jorgensen, a former school teacher, Councilwoman Koki Booth, a local realtor, Councilman Matt Fox, a local restaurateur, and Councilman Steve Walton, a former City of Henderson fire deputy chief. Our appointed officials include myself, and then we have our city clerk, Tammy McKay, Brittany Lee Walker, our city attorney, who's spent considerable time here in Carson City over the past decade, and our recently elected president of the Nevada Judges of Limited Jurisdiction Association, the Honorable Victor Miller, our municipal judge. So the city has a strategic plan that was adopted in 2018. This was a 5-year plan, and we're actually ahead of schedule and incredibly close to achieving all 5 goals. You can see those on the screen, but some of the strategies in financial stewardship include diversification of revenues through grants, ensuring that our reserves are above the statutory 16.67% for our general fund and 20% for all other funds, maximization of funding for outside sources related to infrastructure and other items of that nature. So I can definitely answer questions on that later if you have any questions. So related to our general fund revenues, you'll notice that property taxes only make up 5% of our revenues. Intergovernmental revenues account for a third of our revenue, and most of that comes from the C tax, the consolidated tax, and rents and royalties, which is majoritively from our land leases for solar, make up about a third of our revenue as well. So our general fund revenue is approximately $42 million, but with all funds, the city operates on about $134 million. So a little bit about our organization. We have 355 employees across 10 different departments. Many of our buildings were given to us in 1960 and still in use today. So while they're historic in value, very beautiful, but we do have a number of challenges with the facilities, specifically accessibility. So we've been really trying to increase our ADA improvements to make sure that we have residents that of all abilities can utilize our facilities. City Hall, pictured here, was built in 1931, and our police department also was built around that time, and it used the same concrete that they used on the dam, so it makes it very difficult to make adjustments in walls and things of that nature. So it's very strong. And our staffing does include 8 collective bargaining units, and that includes the Teamsters Local 14. We have 2 Boulder City Police labor unions and the International Association of Firefighters Union. And we're home to 17 parks, 1 swimming pool, and 2 city-owned golf courses. Our police department has 37 sworn officers and more than a dozen support staff. And we have our own 911 dispatch center that handles all of our calls for police and fire response. And our police department's really worked hard to sustain critical staffing levels, and I think that's in large part to our strong recruiting and retention efforts. But it's been a national trend that it is difficult to get people to want to be police officers. So we've really tried very hard on that. We also do maintain a low crime rate, and you can see compared to the state and national trends, we are much lower. Our fire department responded to over 2,600 calls last year, and we've experienced quite an increase in calls, about 25% increase in overall calls for service and 21% increase in EMS calls. And that's 7% higher than the 5-year average. We did recently launch a new business community AED CPR program utilizing ARPA funds, so we've been able to place AEDs across our entire downtown business community so that if anyone's experiencing a medical event that requires an AED, we have them. And we also are working to build a substation. We have 1 fire station, so this would be essentially a second fire station to serve about 35% of our community on the lakeside of our community to get them within the nationally accepted standard for response times. And that specifically would play into our aging population. If they're having a heart attack or something of that nature, then we can get to them in time. Our schools, we have 4 different schools in Boulder City, and they're part of CCSD, the Clark County School District. And nearly a quarter of students do identify their race as something other than white, and nearly 27% of our students fall within the federal guidelines that would qualify them for free and reduced lunches, which this year is actually available district-wide for any students under the community eligibility provision. And while our city holds that small, old-fashioned charm, it is very important to note that our residents do skew older. Census data does give us a good look at our population. We have about 15,000 residents compared to Clark County's 2.2 million, and our median age is 52.7 years old compared to Clark County's median age of 37 and a half. So 29% of our residents are over 65, and half of our adults are in the workforce. 10% of our residents have been in the armed forces, and so you're probably wondering why these numbers are important. So that means about a third of our residents live on fixed incomes. So we have agencies like Emergency Aid of Boulder City, which provides rent and utility assistance, Lend a Hand, which provides rides to seniors and those with limited mobility, and the Senior Center of Boulder City. They all receive support from the city, and we've provided ARPA funds to them to support their efforts. So we are working on affordable housing, and for many years the City Council has approved the transfer of our bond volume cap to the Nevada Rural Housing Authority, so that supports affordable housing projects across the state. Last year, the City Council transferred that bond volume cap to Volunteers of America, which converted an existing assisted living facility into new affordable senior housing apartments. We also have a developer that's in the process of developing an affordable senior living facility in Boulder City, and they're proposing a total of over 180 units, and they'll be pursuing federal low-income housing tax credits. And while we do have a growth control ordinance which limits the number of residential units to be built in a year to 120, we do have a provision that provides a bonus of 50 units for affordable housing projects. So continuing the theme that Mayor Hardy mentioned, so we do have some members of our community that experience homelessness, and Boulder City has a representative on the Continuum of Care Board that promotes a county-wide commitment to homeless services, including securing federal dollars for homeless service providers. We also provide annual funding along with our other local jurisdictions for the annual homeless census and the management information system software that collects information and is able to disseminate services provided for homeless individuals and emergency shelter funding. Our staff does participate in the annual census count in conjunction with Clark County Social Services, and we provide a resources guide that has all of the different resources available for people, also through Emergency Aid of Boulder City. The city has an additional duty grants manager assigned with our finance department, and they're responsible for the centralized administration and submission of all grants within the city. And he's also certified in federal grants management procedures, and we make that a really big priority so that we can maximize the benefits to our community. So another thing that makes Boulder City unique, unlike most of the cities in our state, we provide our residents with all of their utilities except for natural gas, including electricity. So the majority of that power does come from the dam, and Boulder City does retain our own water rights, which are handled by SNWA. While the city provides land leases for solar power, nearly all of it is sent to Power Las Vegas and California. The City Council in 2019 did form a utility advisory committee whose members advise the council on the operations of our electric utility. Again, we do own and operate the electrical distribution system, and unlike the investor-owned utility neighbors, we're not for profit, so we pass on the savings to the customers, and it's under the jurisdiction of our City Council rather than the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada. We do not own or operate any generation resources, and we obtain all of our energy from existing power purchase agreements and on the open energy market. The majority of our energy is considered clean energy, and that's in large part from the hydropower and from solar. And we do employ 12 people in our electric division, so whenever the power goes out, when people call, our crews respond. Just a little bit about our energy demands. So in the winter months, we have a much lower demand of about close to 30,000 megawatts for the entire city. And in the summer months, that balloons to almost 60,000 megawatts. And you can see the breakdown. We operate majoritively on the green energy during the winter months, and then we do have to buy more of the market-based power in the summer months due to air conditioning. So the city of Boulder City has really diversified its revenue sources with utility-scale solar projects and lease revenues. So we have currently over 11,000 acres leased to solar developers, which generates over 2,000 megawatts of energy. And we had our first power purchase agreement with the Townsite Solar Project, which delivers 5 megawatts of firm power to the city through solar and battery storage. And we're exploring additional power purchase agreements in the future due to the dwindling capacity of Hoover Dam with the ongoing drought. So a little bit about the response to the drought. We were one of the first cities in Southern Nevada to adopt the SNWA, the Southern Nevada Water Authority's latest water conservation measures. And we're currently in talks with them to return our wastewater back to Lake Mead. That's our top priority. And we're also in the process of converting up to 2 million square feet of turf in our golf courses and parks to water-smart landscaping. And the city recently authorized rebates for smart irrigation controllers with rain sensors so that our residents can get those at a lower cost. And we are committed to the new 4 acre-feet per irrigated acre water budget for golf courses, because we do have the 2 public that the city owns, and then there's another private course in Boulder City, and they're also committed to getting under that new requirement. So we can't talk about our city without talking about tourism. We have several unique offerings for visitors to Southern Nevada. The Railroad Museum, the dam, Lake Mead National Recreation Area, and trails, parks, and outdoor activities. So tourists account for over 8 million visitors annually to the Lake Mead Recreation Area. The Nevada State Railroad Museum will be expanding at 601 Yucca Street. This is a $35 million investment, and the first phase of the expansion project will be constructing a new visitor center at the corner of Boulder City Parkway and Buchanan Boulevard. And there's also development of a linear park, which will run the length of the museum campus. And the park will incorporate the museum's current live stream interpretive railroad and add an outdoor amphitheater and railroad-themed children's playground along with other leisure activities. And Boulder City will also be getting a new adventure center, but the mayor and I consider it more of a hub. So it's a U.S. Department of Commerce grant of $2.2 million, and this is located where our Chamber of Commerce is at 100 Nevada Way. And it'll allow tourism companies to develop operations at the centralized hub so that visitors can schedule various activities in one location. So it's kind of a one-stop shop. They come in and can find all things adventure related. And then one of the coolest perks to living in Boulder City is seeing the daily visits from the Nevada state animal, the bighorn sheep. With the help of Clark County Commissioner Jim Gibson, the county gave the city a $175,000 grant to make the improvements you can see there to Hemingway Valley Park to benefit the visitors. So 2-legged and 4-legged alike can enjoy it, and improvements include a walking trail, benches, educational signage, irrigation, and watering holes for the bighorn sheep. So with that, I really hope that this presentation helps you understand a little bit about the people and population of Boulder City, as well as the challenges facing our community. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
And thank you for your presentation, Mayor Hardy and Mr. Tedder.